I'm Dr. Stephen Davidson, the Sexual Integrity Coach located in Milton Manors, Florida. Welcome to another episode of Adult Sex Education. If you've been watching for a while, you know that I often cover topics requested by subscribers. However, I also get random questions that warrant a reply, but are not general enough for a 15-minute video. Today I'm combining questions from 3 different viewers that are related to the same topic, and it's all about cross-dressing. Cross-dressing refers to the act of wearing clothing generally associated with the opposite sex. It's a term used more in reference to men than women. This is a complicated subject as we consider the complexity of human sexuality. In recent years, whether you like it or not, we've become more sensitive to gender concepts. Most of you by now have had someone ask you to identify your pronouns, and surprisingly, that really pisses off a lot of people. Mostly because they misunderstand the intention behind this request. The concept of cross-dressing only exists because we make assumptions about gender, and we throw people into binary categories of male or female, and then project a lot of cultural beliefs and values onto them, while making assumptions about them as well. Some people still don't know the difference between a drag queen, a trans woman, and a straight man with a transvestite fetish. Unfortunately, some people are comfortable with their ignorance and don't attempt to understand. When navigating a subject as complex as human sexuality, it is important to understand the motivations for different kinds of sexual behavior. Otherwise, you'll come to inaccurate conclusions about others and possibly even yourself. There are many reasons people cross-dress, so let's dive into this subject a little deeper. Fashion is increasingly unisex, and more people are dressing for comfort and individual style, with less concern for whether the apparel is most suited to a specific gender. For many years, I have proudly carried a man purse, even before it was common for men to do so. It's not a statement about my gender identity, sexual orientation, or my political beliefs. It's more about me being high maintenance and needing a lot of shit to keep me comfortable throughout the day. My wallet, cell phone, eyeglasses, sunglasses, water bottle, allergy spray, facial tissues, dude wipes, sunscreen, car keys, office keys. So, like I said, high maintenance. Some men might try cramming all of that in their pockets. Not only is it uncomfortable, but you eventually run out of pockets. Not too long ago, a man carrying a bag would draw a lot of attention. Men have tried disguising them as backpacks, messenger bags, army duffel bags, briefcases, and so on. But more and more guys are comfortable just calling it their purse. In this example, practicality is the motivation for carrying an item that was once considered only appropriate for women. My point is that many things that might have once been labeled as cross-dressing have now become more mainstream and therefore more acceptable. The first question today comes from Michelle, who wants to know why men who cross-dress are called drag queens. Well, Michelle, not every man who cross-dresses is a drag queen. A drag queen is a performer, an entertainer. The purpose of their cross-dressing is to create a costume for their character. Many drag queens are gay men, but this is not inevitable. Straight men or bi men can theoretically be drag queens as well. Many famous straight actors have appeared in drag in movies and theater. In fact, the term drag is believed to have originated in ancient theater in reference to men playing female roles. There was a time in history when women were considered indecent if they performed on stage. Female roles in theater, then, were always played by men. They wore heavy dresses and costumes along with exaggerated makeup and wigs to attempt to appear as feminine as possible and hide their masculine features. Male actors playing these roles complained about having to drag their heavy costumes across the stage. Hence the phrases wearing drag, doing drag, going in drag, and so on. Still today, when a man is in drag, it's mostly for performance purposes. Cross-dressing is part of the art of performance, is not relevant to his gender identity, and likely provides no sexual stimulation for the performer. Hugo asked why so many gay men like to dress in drag. Drag has long been associated with gay culture. Gay men are generally more willing than straight men to explore all facets of their sexuality. If you attend a gay Halloween party, you will likely find several men in drag, since Halloween is the perfect opportunity to take a risk expressing another side of yourself. Drag queens are a staple in gay culture, often bringing some humor and cheer to any bar, event, or parade. They were instrumental in raising money for AIDS in the 1980s. When healthcare professionals were slow to step up to the plate, drag queens were on the front lines delivering workshops about safe sex practices and hosting HIV testing opportunities in bars and other venues. They were the warriors who guarded the doors at gay nightclubs and kicked off the Stonewall riots that ultimately became the gay rights movement in the U.S. Gays have a warm place in their hearts for drag queens because drag queens just make everything better. William wants to know the difference between a transvestite and a transsexual. Well, William, both of these terms are rarely used anymore because we have better terminology for explaining people's gender and sexual identities. You will occasionally still hear these terms used, and often they are used incorrectly. If you are a fan of the Rocky Horror Picture Show, then you know all about the sweet transvestite from Transsexual, Transylvania. The term transgender is a more appropriate term for what we once referred to as transsexual. A trans man is someone assigned a female gender at birth but who identifies as male. A trans woman is someone who is assigned a male gender at birth but who has female gender identity. Their identity generally shows up early in life, but sometimes they repress it until adulthood to avoid abuse or bullying, or because their culture of birth is too oppressive and dangerous for honest expression. Trans men and trans women exist all over the world, in every profession, and most acclimate into mainstream culture. A trans woman who has fully integrated her female identity is simply dressing in a way that expresses her style and authenticity. She might feel sexy in her clothes, but her wardrobe isn't intended to provide sexual stimulation specifically, nor is it considered a costume for a stage persona. Cross-dressing is a term not generally associated with someone who identifies as transgender, since they are mostly dressing in attire associated with their gender identity. The term transsexual was possibly coined by sexologist Harry Benjamin in 1953 to reference individuals who had undergone genital reassignment surgery. Benjamin had three categories of non-surgical, mild intensity, and high intensity to reference different stages of the individual's transition. By the 1990s, more people were using the term transgender to reference anyone who identified with a gender opposite their assigned sex at birth, regardless where they were in the process of altering their appearance medically, or whether they altered their appearance medically at all. Some people still use the term transsexual to reference someone who has had sex reassignment surgery, but the term transgender is more commonly used. It's also worth noting here that one's gender identity is completely separate from their sexual orientation. A trans man assigned female at birth doesn't transition his gender just to have sex with women, when he could simply identify as lesbian. It's worth noting that one's gender identity is a completely separate subject from their sexual orientation. A trans man assigned female at birth doesn't transition gender just to have sex with women, when she could simply identify as lesbian. Whether one is male attracted or female attracted is irrelevant to their gender identity. This is really confusing for those who still think about sexuality on a binary and heteronormative paradigm. Okay, William, let me move on to that other term, transvestite. We believe the term transvestite was coined by sexologist Magnus Hirschfeld in the early 1900s to refer to the sexual interest in cross-dressing. The term was applied to anyone who enjoyed or preferred to dress in attire that was inconsistent with their assigned sex at birth, who could also be of any sexual orientation, gay, straight, bi, or asexual. The term was rather general and encompassed a lot of different motivations for the behavior. Though both men or women could be labeled as transvestite, the term was mostly used to reference cross-dressing men. The world has always been far more upset with men who express traditionally female qualities than women who show traditionally masculine traits. Today, the term transvestite is mostly used to reference an individual who experiences arousal by wearing clothing, fabrics, or accessories most commonly associated with the opposite sex. Erotic arousal can be obtained by having a fetish for specific clothing, shoes, or accessories, or from autogynephilia, which refers to erotic arousal by thoughts or images of oneself as the opposite gender while wearing these same items. Most people who have a transvestite fetish or autogynephilia are cisgender men who identify as heterosexual. Don't confuse this with being transgender. Remember, I told you earlier that it's really important to understand the motivation behind the behavior. It's very rare to encounter a woman or a gay man with a transvestite fetish or autogynephilia. Fetishes in general are more common in men than women. Straight men are more likely to have fetishes for clothing worn by the object of their erotic desire, and that would be women. Gay men are more likely to have fetishes for clothing worn by the object of their erotic desire, which is men. The gay man is more likely to erotically enjoy wearing a jockstrap, combat boots, or a leather motorcycle jacket, while the straight guy is more likely to erotically enjoy wearing a teddy, silk panties, or fishnet hose. The articles of clothing are symbols for their objects of erotic desire. The American Psychiatric Association specifies that having a transvestite fetish, or any fetish for that matter, is not considered a mental or sexual disorder as long as it's not creating significant distress for the individual socially or occupationally. Most men with transvestite fetishes don't refer to themselves as transvestites. They're more inclined to identify as cross-dressers, since the term transvestite is often misunderstood, and some even consider it derogatory. The wives and girlfriends of these men frequently come to wrong conclusions about their cross-dressing man's sexual orientation or gender identity, because they have trouble grasping the motivation for the behavior. When these men cross-dress, they often report that they find it soothing, relaxing, or erotically arousing. For them, it does not undermine their heterosexual, cisgender identity. Historically, gender is one place where the world has always wanted to draw a hard line. Crossing that line often comes with consequences, and some of them are quite severe. The current cultural attitudes, science, and politics of cross-dressing are layered with centuries of religious oppression, homophobia, and sexism. While you might expect women's attitudes to be more liberal than men, this is rarely the case. For example, some of the most vicious criticisms of the man bun hairstyle come from women. Not everyone values gender equity or freedom of expression. For some, clothes and appearance are a uniform that clearly designates one's destiny in life based on their gender. Blurring the lines of separation can cause confusion and psychological distress for those who feel unsafe living in a world with those of us who refuse to stay in the box. I'm Dr. Stephen Davidson, the Sexual Integrity Coach. I hope you will like this video and subscribe to this channel. Please check out my website at sexualintegritycoach.com. There you'll find information about the services I provide, as well as links to both of my books, Peaceful Mind, Peaceful Life, the Guidebook to Happiness, as well as Sexual Integrity, Finding the Courage to Be Yourself.